I will call the meeting to order. As directed by Manitoba Health, we're requesting people avoid close contact within 2 meters with anyone showing symptoms of respiratory illness, such as coughing or sneezing. If you are experiencing flu-like symptoms, we're requesting that you excuse yourself from the room. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory in a traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me is Len Nisbet to my left and Jeff Peich to my far left. The assessor today is Stephen Lobenstein and the recording secretary is Belkin Rojo. We will be hearing applications for revision of assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence upon the application has been brought forward, the applicants may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private to make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and we part of the public record. So can you do the swearing in? Thank you. Okay, so the first item on today's agenda is 80 Furniture Park Road, I guess it is.
Mr. Chairman, if I can interject, just for the sake of expediency, if the board wishes to do so, the first three premises on the agenda, 80 Furniture Park, 170, and 50 Furniture Park, are all the subject of municipal board appeals. The realty assessments were confirmed by this board in each case, and notwithstanding the requests that we have in our briefs based on the realty assessment, our expectation is that the matter would be finally decided both as to the rental rates and the rest of the parameters that were in debate. So if the board wishes to do so, I have no objections to a 50-for-1 confirmation for these three, with the intention that we would lift those to the municipal board and have it heard at the same time as the realty appeals that are already pending. So I'll leave that with you to consider, and it's up to you.
That makes sense. We will still need you to read into the
Sure, I'll read it. Yeah. 80 Furniture Park Road, the business assessment ID is 1981. The total annual rental value is $956,760.
Okay, and we'll just put down confirmation requested. All right, any questions from the panel?
No questions.
Okay, and let me just open up your brief in 170. Oops, this is the applicant brief. Okay, 170 Furniture Park. Mr. Assessor, if you could read in the
170 Furniture Park, the business assessment ID is 52260. The total annual rental value is $612,840.
And then you're requesting confirmation?
Yes.
right, and the third one is 50 Furniture Park. Again, I shall open the file. I'm going to go to the first item 7-1. Okay.
50 Furniture Park Road, the business assessment ID is 1979. The total annual rental value is $994,560.
Yes, please.
Great. Go to item 8. 25 Dougal Road.
1025 Dougal Road, business assessment ID is 2490. The total annual rental value is $202,680. The total area of the premise is 24,300 square feet, and the overall ARV we're applying to that square foot is $8.34 square foot. So looking down the brief, we're applying a base rent of $6.23 per square foot. For occupancy costs, we're applying full heat, electricity, and water, but we are not applying any air conditioning. And that equals a total annual rental value of $202,680. If you just look at the page 2, you can see a quick overhead view of the property. You can see it's on Dougal Road. It's got some property in the back, or some room in the back for the trucks to move in and out. And it's got good access to Dougal. There's also a map of where it's located, just to give you an idea, page 3. So looking at the rent comparables, they're all fairly close proximity to the property on Terracon, Bates, Niagara, Kernahan, and Ames. The lease starts range from 2012 to 2017. And the lease terms range from 4 years all the way up to 10 years. The reported areas are similar to the subject property, ranging from 20,160 square feet all the way up to 27,404 square feet. And again, the reported rents are similar to what we've applied to the subject property. These net rents range from $6 a square foot all the way up to $8.96 a square foot. This particular property, we have an age of 1975 on it. The wall height of 16 feet. So the comparables are similar in the sense that they range from 1989 all the way up to 2000, and they range in wall height from 20 feet up to 26 feet. So we feel that these comparables show that this rental rate is fair and equitable, and we feel that the assessment should be confirmed. Thank you.
Questions? Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Lobenstein, what did you say the wall height was that you had? Is it
we have 16 feet.
Yeah, 16 feet. So the wall height is by today's standards, and you mentioned the comps range from 20 feet and north of that. 16 feet is somewhat functionally obsolete by today's standards, correct?
It's lower than some of the other, than obviously the comparables, but that's just one distinction of this property. There's many other attributes.
I understand, but you'd agree that a significant driver of value for the property relates to the wall height for warehouse uses, correct?
It's part of it. It's not all of the. It's not the only driver of value.
I agree. It's not the only, Ms. Lobenstein. I'd say it's extremely important, though. Put it to you that it's a very important factor in the case of industrial users. With respect to now you mentioned the age, and we can agree that the age is 1970. I have 75. Did you have 75? 75. Okay. 38 Terracon Place. Is that Terracon Business Park?
Yeah.
So that was built, was it late 90s, early 2000s?
That one's in 89.
89? Okay.
It was built over a period of time with this premise.
Sure. Do you know the percentage of office area, air-conditioned space in 38 Terracon?
It would definitely have some more built-up office space as compared to the subject.
Okay. Yeah. Sure. With respect to, and we can agree that the reference date, the valuation date that we're looking at this morning is April 1st of 2018, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so the two rents closest in time to the reference date are comparables number 1 and 3 at $6.695, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry, one last question. Were you aware, Mr. Lobenstein, of the board revision decision concerning the realty assessment at this
Yeah,
time?
there was a board of revision decision on it. It was decreased. The board did decrease the value. I believe that they decreased it. I think it was $5.84 per square foot that they used to decrease. Yeah, that was part of the. They also used a 7.75 cap rate. So they adjusted the NOI and used the 7.7 cap rate.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Those are my questions.
Okay, Lynn, any questions?
Has this property been appealed to the municipal board by any of the parties?
I don't believe this one has appealed. Jeff?
I have none. Thank you.
I have no questions, so you can proceed.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask the board members and Mr. Lobenstein to turn to page 4. There's a common, you'll hear a common theme this morning with respect to these matters, where what we're suggesting for the most part is to reduce the business assessments in a manner that's consistent with the realty assessment appeals for the properties. So in this case, the factual circumstances that described by Mr. Lobenstein and ourselves are consistent. 24,300 square feet in the premise area, built in 1975. It's a one-story metal frame industrial building with a wall height of 16 feet, which I certainly do maintain is obsolete by today's standards. Now, the crux of the matter is this: if you go down towards the bottom of page 4 under the market rent category, or heading, I should say, the realty assessment was reduced from $1,760,000 to $1,645,000 based on a 7.75% capitalization rate and an adjusted net operating income. So the reduction, and I'll point to this, the calculation out to the board shortly. The reduction is consistent with the application of a net market rent of $584 a square foot. So applying that $584 a square foot results in a potential net rent of $141,912, and that's what we're requesting this morning. If you turn to page 5 then, with the $141,912 and the application of the occupancy costs, the total revised business assessment we're suggesting is $193,140 rounded. So on page 8 of our materials, that for the board's reference is a copy of the Board of Revision order. And on page 10, this is the workup using the 775 cap rate and the potential rent of $584 a foot. It comes into the value as ordered by the board. Now, if the board members would recall, one of the items under debate consistently through the realty assessment appeal hearings was the quote unquote management or non-recoverable expense. In our page 10, we have assumed that the board did not allow the 5% management. So I present my submission to you with that caveat that as far as I can tell, they didn't apply it and they applied 584. But that assumption would be incorrect if the 5% was applied, but I don't believe it was. So we're requesting a small reduction this morning to the revised annual rental value of $193,140. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Lobenstein?
So you've supplied no rent comparables?
In this particular case, I looked for the materials that were submitted to the Board of Revision. I couldn't find it, so I've supplied what I could get, which was the workup, and relying on that workup in the board order. You're right.
I have no questions.
Hey, Lynn, questions?
Okay, you were talking kind of fast there.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I didn't have your realty submission open when you were going through the numbers.
Okay.
I understand that mathematically it works out to that 584 rent.
Yes.
Was that the number that Altus presented in there?
No, Altus was looking for something lower, but we settled up, like we didn't appeal this further. So we settled on this number and based on the workup that we've got here.
Okay, so in the realty, there was an adjusted NOI.
Yes.
And did I hear you say that works out to a 584?
If you assume on our page 10,
Yeah, I need
So-
to see the numbers too. So, okay,
Yeah.
I'm on page 10.
So page 10, if you, and this is the caveat I put, and I really do believe it's the case, if you assume that the 5%, we'll call it management expense, wasn't allowed, what we know is the board used a 7.75 cap rate,
Right.
and we know all the other parameters weren't in dispute as far as vacancy and the shortfall rate and the 2%.
They were not disputed.
No, they were not disputed. So the only other parameter that would have been adjusted to get to a revised NOI would have been the rent, and that's how the 584 comes into play. Because the rest of the parameters were not under debate.
And just taking out that 5%
Yeah.
management would not have resulted in the number.
The 5%,
came
the
up.
reason I think it is not the 5% actually will result in a lower number. So that's why I don't think they.
So you think it had to have been more than just the 5?
I think they would have set the management to 0 and adjusted the rent, because if you kept the rent but used the 5%, it actually results in a number that's lower still. So that didn't make sense to me.
I was just trying to follow
Yeah,
through on your
yeah.
numbers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I have none. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna follow up a little bit on Lynn's. When I just say it, adjusted NOI, the previous panel could have been more specific and said reduce rental rate based on the rental rate of 584, if
Yep.
that's what they did.
But I agree, it would have been nice to have been more specific, but at the same time, if they had, I guess my suggestion would be if they had taken, because 5% was such a hotly debated item, what we saw relatively consistently, one of two things, where we actually achieved our number, it was obvious that the 5%, the board agreed with the 5% and they kept it in. So if it's based on applicant's evidence, we knew 5%, it's like top to bottom, including that. And we saw a few cases like this where the wording was a little more general. He's very specific on cap, but the wording around the NOI was more general. In theory, it's possible that the board would have said, well, we don't like 5%, but maybe 2% or 3% or something. Okay, that's because of the wording here. That's theoretically possible. I doubt it, but it's possible, because usually it was an all or nothing sort of acceptance of the submission. So when they talk about adjusted NOI, what we tried to do was to determine, okay, what was all under dispute was vacancy. Shortfall was in dispute rarely, but every once in a while, but certainly not in this case. Vacancy could be an issue. It wasn't in this case. And so what we're left with is the top line, but that doesn't hold if you assume that the board would have applied 2.25 or 2.3% for management or something like that. Right? So it isn't abundantly clear. I'm making what I believe to be a very strong inference as to what they did.
Okay, did you work the numbers if you added the 5% for management?
I did work the numbers, and it came out to a value that was different than the 1,646,000, which is why I concluded. But I was treating it as an all or nothing, like either 0 or 5, and not something in between, because you could find a number in between and get exactly to this number.
I'm not, I don't think the board, at least I haven't come across a decision where the board went in between.
That's what I mean. Like, I treated it as an all or nothing.
Yeah.
But so that's the assumption I made.
Okay, all right. We go to 10 wall, but let me open the finance report. You're certainly saving a lot of trees by having this electronic. Okay, you can proceed, Mr. Assessor.
Sure. 510 Wall Street, the business assessment ID is 24255. The total
510, 1510.
sorry, did I say 510? Sorry, 1510. As long as the business assessment ID, 24255. The total annual rental value is $177,060. The total area of the premise is 20,252 square feet, and the overall ARV is $8.74 per square foot. So we get to that, overall ARV per square foot by using the base rent. We have it broken up into two different premises here. One's at 13,127 square feet, and the other one's at 7,125 square feet. and the premises range from $5.85 up to $8.07 for the 2 premises. So we're applying full heat, electricity, and water for occupancy costs, but we're not applying any air conditioning to the subject property. And so that gives us our total annual rental value of $177,060. Looking further down, there are leases in place for this. They state that they're gross leases and they start in 2015. There wasn't a lot of information when I looked at the mailer. In the sense that basically, in terms of these leases, they just basically stated that it was gross leases. So we felt that I feel that these are fairly low rents that are being applied for the area. So when we look at the rent comparables, all my rent comparables are on Aaron, Wall, Spruce, Aaron, Myrtle, Wall, White, Wall. So they're all in very close proximity to the subject property. They're all similar in age. So basically, the subject property was built in built in stages, built in 6 stages. In 1949, 1955, 1958, 1959, there was a 2002 part and a 1966. They range from 14 feet up to 18 feet for the wall height, where the subject properties similarly are built in 1944, 1978, 1952, 1947, 1949, 1966, and 1954. So they all range, and their ages are similar to the subject property, and their wall heights are similar in that they range from 12 feet all the way up to 20 feet. So that being said, these leases I somewhat question these leases for the subject property due to the fact that similar types of buildings in the area are renting for a much higher net rent than the subject property. Just going to bring you to page 2. You can look at the subject property, just some overhead views. You can see it's right on Wall Street, and then you can see the map there as well. So a lot of subject or the rent comparables are on Aaron and Wall. And Spruce, they're all in close proximity to the subject property. So that being said, and again, looking into this property a little more, I was trying to figure out why these leases are so low for the area. I was questioning maybe there was some loss of deferred maintenance or it just wasn't upkept, but there's been permits taken out as early as 2004 for $40,000 for some interior alterations. In 2002, there was a new construction, so it's difficult to say. Like I couldn't really figure out why these rents were so low. Anyways, besides the point, they have submitted this into the mailer, but we feel that our assessment based on the rent comparables for the area is fair and equitable and should be confirmed.
Okay, questions, Mr. Mayor?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lobenstein, what is the total area we're in agreement with, but you've got the premises split out between 13,000 and 7,000. So what's the distinction?
I think that was probably the new build probably got, the 2002 build probably got taken out.
Except that's 3,000 feet.
That is 3,000
so
feet. So there would have been another part that was added to it as well. And I couldn't quite figure that out myself. So.
Okay, because I can't. Okay,
yeah.
It's definitely more. I mean, there's the 3,000 foot addition in 2002, and everything else is sort of 40s, 50s, and 60s.
Our field notes were great on this. That would require inspection for me to understand why.
Okay, well, it's split out. All right, fair enough. But the whatever it is, the 7,000 feet, the department's applied a much higher ARV per square foot. Is that based on the premise size then? Because this is all one.
Yeah, that would use definitely the premise size would have an influence on that.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and you've mentioned there's the 3,000 foot addition in 2002. The rest of it started in 49. Was built in stages between 1949 and 66. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
With wall heights of between 14 and a couple of buildings at 18 feet, about 7,000 feet, and then the rest between 12 and 14 or 16 feet, I guess. Now, you know what? I'm not going to belabor this. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Those are my questions.
Okay, Lynn, questions?
I have a question. In your subject lease information, you note that it's not owner occupied.
Yeah.
Is this an arm's length lease?
Again, this is something I was trying to figure out when.
I'm just looking at the business name versus, okay, the owner, is the owner name there the owner of the business, or is the owner the owner of the realty, like the property? Okay, so on this front sheet, we don't know who the actual owner of the realty, like.
Yeah, no,
property.
that's
Okay.
not listed.
Okay. Okay. And this is a gross lease too, so,
That's what they're stating. Yeah, they're stating that the included in the rent is the heat, the water, the hydro, and marketing. They checked off. So
and these at the bottom are net rents.
these are all net rents at the bottom.
Okay, thank you.
Jeff, any questions?
It's just more a comment. I find the lease rates here, the way they're presented, a bit perplexing. And sort of over and above that, I think you've tried to answer it, but the way the premise is split out, is there any rationale? I know it's been proposed that this is
Again,
a build period.
I had my questions about it myself. Even looking at the building, I'm not too sure why it would have been broken out that way. So this is something that I want to look at a little when I get back to the office a little more time to figure out. It will probably need an inspection to fully understand why we separated it.
And not being owner occupied, these are the reported rents.
These are the reported rents. Okay, so they're saying they're rent.
Okay, no other questions.
Okay, I have no questions, so you can proceed, Mr. Rim.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And to be clear, for the reference of the board, we're not using those contract rents either. We don't make any reference to it in our realty assessment appeal, and we're not making reference to it now because I am in agreement with Mr. Lobenstein. If you took 441 and you assume whatever 350 or 375 in costs, your net rent is less than $1 a foot. That we're not using that. So we believe that I do believe there's more to the story as to why the rents would be what they were, whether they're affiliates or whether, okay, so we're not referencing those at all. So if I could ask the board members and Mr. Lobenstein to turn to our page 4, please. And Mr. Lobenstein had referenced this, and I'll go through it in a little more detail. This is a property where the improvements have been built in 6 separate stages. The most recent, recall that the total area of the premise is 20,252 square feet, and we're treating it as, quite frankly, as one premise with one occupant. That's our understanding. So we took the 20,252, and of that 3,000 square feet, roughly 1/7 or between 1/6 and 1/7 was built in 2002, but the remainder was built between 1949 and 1966. So this is fundamentally a very, very significantly older building. Wall heights are absolutely not ideal. There's a couple of sections, section number 1 and section number 4, that are 18 feet, and that amounts to about 1/3 of the building, but the remaining 2/3 is between 12 and 16 feet, and that I'd suggest very strongly is obsolete by today's standards. Working for this occupant, but certainly to try and lease it out, that would be a detriment. So then moving on to page 5, this is another case where the realty assessment was appealed, and in this case we have a higher degree of precision based on the Board of Division order. The 2020 realty assessment was reduced from $1,436,000 to $1,181,000, and I'm at the top of page 5 now. And this board specifically said based on a net operating income of $98,052 with a capitalization rate of 8.3%. So the $98,052, as we show on page 5, is consistent with the application of the 550 square foot rate. Again, a management expense of 0, but then running it through with the remaining parameters that were not in dispute in the cap rate of 8.3%, we come in at $1,181,350, which is rounded to $1,181,000, which is what we believe the board had done. Now, if you turn to page 6, we had actually suggested a potential net market rent of $5 a square foot. So the board did not entirely agree with our position. But for the purpose of this hearing, again, what we're asking this board and this panel to consider is the $5.50 square foot rate ordered by this board in connection with the realty, and to order a similar reduction to the business assessment to be consistent with the realty decision. So applying the $5.50 a square foot, and again, I've used the 13,000, 7,000. It is one premise, but I've used those same numbers that the assessor had on their website and that Mr. Lowenstein presented this morning. Adding in the occupancy costs, the suggested ARV is $154,080 as indicated at the bottom of page 6. So then if we move on briefly to page 10 for the board's reference, there is the Board of Revision Realty Assessment decision for the subject, reducing it from $1,436,000 to $1,181,000 based on that NOI of $98,052 and a cap rate of 8.3%. Turning to page 12, this is the start of our realty assessment brief. And what I'll do for the board's reference, if you turn to our page 19, page 19 has the comparables, with one exception. The very last comparable, number 17, is on Wall Street. The remainder are on Clifton Street, with an average net rent of $476 and a median rent of $465. I didn't think it was fair questioning Mr. Lowenstein on some of the rents that are reported in his systems that the brief is kicked out. To me, quite frankly, some of those look like gross rents that may need occupancy, or I should say gross lease costs deducted, but I don't believe it was fair to ask Mr. Lowenstein. I'm assuming you didn't have the mailers and such, so certainly if you look at the department's rents in the area relative to ours, we certainly believe, and these rents have been vetted and checked, and certainly are after deduction of whatever occupancy costs for leases that are gross or semi-gross, and there are a number of them in that area. So it was on this basis that we had asked for the $5 a foot, and as I say, the board, based on that evidence and the evidence submitted by the assessor at that hearing, went with $5.50. So we're asking for the $5.50 rate and a reduction to $154,080. Thank you.
Okay, questions?
It's under page 19. They're all from one building here. The rents that are brought into the
1 through 8 are the same building, and 9 through 16 would be a different building again, and then Wall Street. So they're from 3 different buildings in the area, directly in the area.
Okay, so would that be a typical way to look at rents in the area by just basically focus on 2 buildings?
Well, there's 3 buildings, and yeah, if they're negotiated near the reference date and they're all sort of similar premises, then absolutely.
Yeah, those are all my questions.
Hey, Lynn, any questions? Jeff?
I have none, thanks.
Okay, and I have none. I had a comment that I thought this building was from here. Go to 900 in there, and then we just open the files. Okay, you can begin. 900 in there.
Sure. 900 there, and the business assessment ID is 23378. The total annual rental value is $193,980. The total area is 18,812 square feet, and our overall ARV is $10.31 per square foot. So to get to that ARV per square foot, we are applying $7.86 for our base rent. We are applying full heat, air conditioning, and electricity and water to this building to get our annual rent value of $193,980. So to looking at the rent comparables. So yeah, so this building similarly was built in stages as the last one. It was built in 3 stages. It was built in 1965, 1973, and 1989. It ranges, the first building was 5,250 square feet. The second one was 3,984 square feet. The third one was 9,578 square feet. The third one has a wall height of 28 feet. That was built in 1989. The other two, the 1965 has a wall height of 12 feet, and the 1973 build has a wall height of 20 feet. So when looking at similar properties, we're trying to find similar properties in the area and with similar ages for this particular property. So I have Marion, Terracon, Plinkett, Debates, Prairie Way, and Kernahan. So they're all in fairly close proximity to the subject property, which is on Nairn. And these ones range from 1977 up to 2008 for the Prairie Way. And their wall heights range from 20 feet all the way up to 28 feet as well. So the lease starts again range from 2012 up to 2015. The terms range from 5 years to 10 years. The reported areas are similar to the subject property, as they range from 15,079 square feet all the way up to 24,000. And the reported rents, again, are similar to the rent that we're applying, as they range from $7.50 all the way up to $11.35 square foot. So we feel that the supporting evidence of the rent comparables supports the total annual rental value of $193,980. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Rim?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Alderman, you were aware again, this was the subject of a board order on the realty assessment, correct? Okay. Now you lost me a little bit. The ages of the comparables. I know you said Prairie Way this is a much newer building in 2008, but
yeah,
you lost me on the other ones. What
sorry.
were the ages?
Yeah, Terracon's 1989.
Okay.
The next one would be 1977. 275 Debates is 2000, and the Kernahan is 1968.
Okay, so the Kernahan then, well, that's not quite fair because it's built in stages, but the Kernahan and the Plinkett at 1977 would be the closest in overall age. I believe, sorry, I'm going to preface this. My understanding, based on the realty assessment, is that the city's applied a variant age for the whole premise, which is all three stages of 1978. Had you noticed that in your research?
Yeah, I would
Okay.
agree with that.
Okay, so 1978. So based on the 78, then Plinkett and Kernahan might be the closest in terms of the building ages. And were those built in stages? Do you know? That's probably not a fair question, but or was it all one?
I would. Kernahan might have been built in stages. Fairly large building. That I'm not too sure on.
Okay,
but that would be the only one I would guess.
Okay.
Built in stages, if any of them.
fair enough. Fair enough. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Those are my questions.
Lynn, questions?
I have none, thank you.
And I have none, so you can proceed.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. If we can turn to page 4, please. So this is 900 Nairn Avenue. This is the Midland Foods building, owned and occupied. And the records that Mr. Lobenstein has in our presentation at the Board of Revision were consistent. 3 stages of improvements. The first in 65, 5,200 feet, and then 73 with 3,900 feet, and then a 1989 edition of 9,578 feet with a very good wall height in the case of that premise, or that section of 28 feet. The overall variant age is 1978, which we believe would be appropriate. To the bottom of page 4, then the market rent. Again, this is a case where the realty assessment had been appealed to this board. The board reduced the realty assessment from $1,731,000 to $1,231,000, and in this case, the reasons given were based on the evidence presented by the applicant. Our calculation, in turn, of the potential market rent for the subject was $6 a square foot. Pardon me. So that's $112,872 per annum. So that's our request this morning. Turning to page 5, then. If you take the $6 per square foot and add in the occupancy costs, as you can see in our chart on the bottom of page 5, the total assessment requested is $158,940. Again, very briefly, turning to page 9. This is a copy of the Realty Assessment Board of Revision decision for the subject, 900 Nairn Avenue, $1,731,000 to $1,241,000, as shown at the bottom based on evidence presented by the applicant. And then our submission at the Realty Assessment Appeal is contained from pages 11 on, and again, for the board's reference at page 18. And this is the least comparable information that we were using in connection with the Realty Assessment Appeal. As you can see there, it's got leases negotiated in 13, 14, 15, and 16, similar size premises for similar vintage buildings, and with an average of 649 and a median of 591. So we had suggested the $6 rate, and the board agreed with our submission in this case and applied that rate along with the rest of our suggested parameters. And so we're asking for the same rate to be applied by this panel this morning. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Levinson?
Sorry, in terms of your calculation, so you're just assuming the board just moved the rent, they didn't change anything else in their board decision?
Well, no, they went with our submission. They went with our, based on applicant's evidence, so they used our data, they used our parameters top to bottom.
Okay, that's all my question.
Questions, Lynn?
I have no questions.
Jeff?
Absolutely.
Okay, 67 Paramount Road. This is assessment ID is 38351. The total annual rental value is $189,840. The total area is 24,181 square feet, and an overall ARV is $7.85 a square foot. So looking at the base ARV, or the net rent we're applying, is $5.74 a square foot. We're applying for occupancy costs, excuse me, full heat, electricity, water, but we're not applying any air conditioning to get to our annual rental value of $189,840. There is a lease in place for this. It's for $4.55 a square foot. This is a 10-year lease that was signed in 2008, so I would suggest that it doesn't seem to step up or anything when I looked at it, so I would suggest it's quite dated. When looking at the rent comparables, we're looking at similar types of buildings. This is a multi-tenanted building, so all the rent comparables are multi-tenanted as well. There are Church, Wayton, Innsbruck. There's 3 in the Paramount, the similar complex as a subject property, and 1 on Mountain. And these rents range from $5.25 a square foot all the way up to $6.50 a square foot, which is similar to the rent that we've applied to the subject property. Their square footages are similar as a subject property, as they range from 21,600 square feet all the way up to 28,840 square feet. And their lease starts are newer than the subject's lease at they range from 2013 all the way up to 2017. You can just take a look at the subject property on page 2. You get an overhead view and see where it's located. So this particular building was built in 1975. I have it at 22 feet for wall height. The subject properties are similar, as they range from 1975 all the way up to 2000 for the Innsbruck location. So we feel the assessed rental value of $189,840 is fair and equitable, and it should be fair. Thank you.
Questions?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. We can agree, Mr. Lovenstein, this was also, this property, including the subject premise, was the subject of a board of revision order on realty, correct?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And just so I'm clear, the base ARV, this is now right smack in the middle of your page 1, where it's got base ARV per square foot 574. Is that that's the model rent, right? Okay, so the model rent, we can agree that the model rent was changed by the board in connection with the realty assessment.
Well, the thing is, this is a multi-tenant building, so every single one of these premises, your BA appeal is for this particular premise, not the whole building.
But that wasn't the question.
Okay.
The question was that the board ultimately went with the applicant's rent, which would have amended this rental rate for this premise, correct? Amongst others.
So they went for the overall rental rate for the entire building.
As presented by the applicant. Okay. So you had mentioned, now this is key too, you had mentioned it's not a step up. Actually, I'm suggesting to you, Mr. Lovenstein, it is. Did you have a chance to review our material, or not our materials, but the Realty materials?
No,
Okay, that's fine. Then I'm not going to belabor that. I'll go through that myself. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Those are my questions.
Okay, Lynn, questions? Jeff? Neither, so you can proceed, Mr.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask the board to, and Mr. Lovenstein to go to page 4 then? So in this case, the Realty assessment was, and this is a one tenant in a large multi-tenant. There's actually 4 buildings on site, and this is one tenant in one of the buildings, so certainly a much larger overall property. The board in this case, with respect to the Realty assessment, reduced the value from 24,557,000 to 19,010,000. And again, the quote, the reasons based on a capitalization of 7.25%, and this is key here, the applicant's rent, and that will be part of what I submit to you later this morning, a 10% vacancy and including 7% for non-recoverable expenses. So in this case, the board was really quite precise in their description of how they got to the revised number. Our value based on the rent for the entire property that we were suggesting was in turn based on a rent of $455 per square foot for the subject premise, which is $110,016. And that's our request this morning. So if you turn briefly to page 5, with the application of the rate of $455 a square foot to the premise area, and again, neither the department nor we have any air-conditioned spaces at Iron Mountain, the shredding company. So there's no requirement for an office build-out or anything. And using that rent, then we come in at a suggested ARV of 161,040. Now, I'm going to skip right to the back initially. If we can go to the very last page, because Mr. Lovenstein made a comment about a step up, and in fact, this is a step up, please. And I hope the board, you might have to increase the size of the view because the printing is quite small. But if you go to the second entry in the rent roll, which is at the very last page of our submission, and there's Iron Mountain, Canada. And if you look after the tax and operating cost recoveries and such, then there's 3 columns. And what the second column of the 3 is step up lease, yes, no, and it's marked as Y. And then, so this actually, the 455 rate is a stepped up rate. If you then go to our page 18, and this is now in our Realty assessment submission.
Sorry, page 18.
Page 18, please. And if I'm going too fast, because I'm used to shuffling paper, so if I'm going too fast, please let me know.
We'll get there.
So page 18, Iron Mountain, again, is the second entry, and that's where the rent step, our records indicate that the rent step was in 2017, January 17 to the end of 17, and through the reference date of $455 a square foot. That, I'm not going to belabor that, but it is actually a stepped up rate under that 10-year term. And based upon the Board of Revision decision, accepting the applicant's rent, which includes this $455, and with this stepped up rate, that's our request this morning. Again, for the board's reference, just for the page numbers, the Board of Revision Realty order is located at pages 9 to 10. Thank you.
Okay, questions?
So in terms of the step up though, we have no idea when it stepped up and what the step ups are, right?
Actually, it stepped up in January of 17. If you go to our page 18, and if you look at the second entry and towards the right-hand side, it's got stepped rent Y. And then what we do is when we see that, we investigate when the start and end dates of the step up are. So this step was in January of 17. That's the third last column under that row.
So, but they've supplied nothing on the mailer stating.
No, that was investigations that we conducted when we see it on the mailer. Yeah, when they put a Y beside step up.
And so, okay. And those are all my questions.
Okay, Lynn, questions?
No questions.
Just give one comment. Thank you for making the number divisible by 12. Not all agents do that. You have to check them. We go to the next one, which is 2078 Logan. So you can proceed, Mr. Levinson.
The address is 2078 Logan. The business ID is 41989. The total annual rental value is $175,620. The total area is 20,400 square feet, and the overall ARV per square foot is $8.61. We're applying the base rent or net rent for a model of $6.50 per square foot. We're applying full heat, full electricity, full water to the entire square footage. We're not applying any air conditioning for the occupancy costs to get our annual rental value of $175,620. There is subject lease information. It's actually stated on the mailer when they sent it in that the tenant and the landlords are related. So we're not basically we're not putting any evidence or any weight on the actual rent itself that's there. So we have to look at our rent comparables, and they're on Keewatin, Winfield, Inkster, Church, and Winfield. They have start dates from 2011, ranging up to 2018. Actually, that one should not be in there. June 1st, that's past the reference date of April 1st, so take that one out. I don't know how that got in there. For the Winfield way, so we're ranging from $6.37 a square foot up to $7. So it's within the range of our model rent of $6.50 a square foot, and the properties are close to the subject properties in the sense of location on Keewatin, Winfield, Inkster, and Church. If you just look at the page 2, you get an overhead view of the property. It's a very large property with large land to building ratio. You get an idea of where it's located on Logan. Looking at the map, it's just off King Edward. So we feel that the rent comparables will show that the base rent of $6.50 is fair and equitable, and that it should be correct.
Okay, questions, Mr. Rim?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Globenstein, maybe I missed it. Do you have the building ages for, not including the last one?
Yes, I forgot to mention that. Sorry. My rent comparables?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have 1975 for Keewatin, 1985 for 35 Winfield. I have, wait, is that the right one? Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong ratio. There you go. Yeah, 35 Winfield, 1567 Inkster, it's 1966, and for 1320 Church, it's 1974.
Great. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Those are my only questions.
Questions?
Yeah, no questions.
Okay, proceed, Mr. Rim.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Page 4, please. The realty rent in this case, or sorry, the realty assessment for the subject was reduced as part of the reduction for the larger parcel known as 2070 Logan. It was reduced from $6,195,000 to $5,239,000. In this case, there was a very specific comment made by the board. It said, based on the evidence presented by the Assessment and Taxation Department, including a rental rate of $5 and a capitalization rate of 7.25%. So based upon that $5 rental rate, that was specifically included by the board in its reasons, and which ostensibly was presented by the assessor. I don't have anything that I could find relating to discussions between that assessor, it wasn't Mr. Lovenstein, and Altus, but I'm assuming the $5 rate was a very specific rate that was quoted. So we've applied that $5 rate that the board lists in our calculation. So on page 5, if you take the 20,400 square feet, and again, there's no air conditioning in this. This is part of a larger plating operation. And if you take the occupancy cost, then it comes in at a annual rental value of $145,020. On page 9 of our materials, there's the Board of Revision order reducing it from $6,195,000 to $5,239, and then again on the next page, top of page 10, it speaks to the evidence presented by the assessor, including a rental value of $5 and a cap of 7.25%. Our request had been at the $5 rate. If we turn briefly to page 17, which is, this is now in our submission for the realty. So at the sort of middle to the bottom of that page, it looks like the department originally applied $5.94, and we had suggested a $5 rate based on the comparables as shown there. Based on the wording of the order, it would appear that the assessor agreed with that component, but again, I have, other than the board order and the statement itself, I have nothing further to provide to this board, but we're applying that $5 rate and ask that this board order accordingly. Thank you. Questions?
It's not really a question, just kind of following up on that. I read the order itself, so I spoke to the assessor, and he says this wasn't a recommendation. So basically, he doesn't know why the board wrote it as evidence presented by the assessment organization.
Okay, well that makes, actually I thought it was based on evidence presented by us, but I looked at that order, it's like, I guess it was a joint rec, but I totally, and for Mr. Chairman, I have no reason to doubt, it looked odd to me, so I have no reason to doubt Mr. Lobenstein's comments.
So I'm just stating that. I don't have any other questions.
Yeah.
Just stating that this was not a recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay, questions, Lynn?
No questions.
Sometimes being precise isn't necessarily means not going to be confusion. That one differently. Okay, our last property. So final 427 McPhillips.
427 McPhillips Street, the business assessment ID is 23253. The total annual rental value is $169,800. The total area is 16,915 square feet, and the overall ARV is $10.04 a square foot. So we're applying a base rent of $7.59 a square foot. We're applying full heat, electricity, water, and air conditioning to get our annual rental value of 169,800 square feet. There is a rent for this property, as we can see. This is a multi-tenanted building, so they're paying a rent of $6.50 a square foot, which was signed in May of 2014. We're looking at the evidence. In terms of the locations, we're using Mountain, Omens Creek, Kuwaitan, and King Edward Street. So looking at the property, you can see it's right on McPhillips. It's on page 2. It's pretty much across from the casino. The map is shows its exact location. So this is a multi-tenant property. The comparables are also all multi-tenanted. 1372 Mountain, it was built in 1988. It's got 22-foot wall height. 130 Omens Creek was built in 2000. It's got 31-foot wall height. The Kuwaitan was built in 1959. Or sorry, the Kuwaitan property was built in 1981. It's got 26-foot wall height. Mountain was built in 1989. It's got 25-foot. And King Edward was built in 1977. It's got 21 feet. The subject property, we have it as a 1979 build with that 19-foot wall height. So we feel that the rent comparables support our base ARV at $7.59 and our total annual rent value of $169,800. We feel is fair and equitable and should be confirmed. Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Rimmer?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lobenstein, we can agree that this was the subject also of a realty assessment appeal.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. That's my only question.
Oh, any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Page 4, please. Again, on the market rent matter this morning, the 2020 Realty Assessment was heard by this board on January 28th of this year. Seems like a lifetime ago now with everything that's happened since then, but it was, and then the last heard of that date. Assessment was reduced from $5,850,000 to $5,164,000, and again, very specific reasons. Based on the evidence presented by the applicant, including a rate of 2% for non-recoverable expenses. So again, I think the board was at pains here to indicate that the 2% was what was being applied and not the additional 5%. Our market rent or our potential market income for the subject premise based on our submission for the realty was $650 a square foot or $109,844 per annum. So again, if you turn to now page 5, our request, including the occupancy cost, is to reduce the assessment to $151,200. If you go briefly to our page 9, and as Mr. Laubenstein correctly pointed out, this is a multi-tenant property, so the assessed address for realty assessment is 399 McPhillips. This premise is known as 427, which is one of the units within this industrial mall. So 399 McPhillips, the reduction there, 5.8 to 5.164 million. And again, on page 10, the reasons being based on the evidence presented by the applicant, including a rate of 2% for non-recoverable. So again, very clear reasons in that case, which would imply that the potential rent was applied that we had suggested. That potential rent, if one turns very quickly to page 17. So for unit 427, where it shows their rental north. This is now in the chart towards the bottom of page 17, rental north, $16,899 at $650 a foot under the May 14 lease. And that's what the board has applied in connection with the realty. And that's what we're requesting this morning. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Lawson? Then?
No questions.
I have no questions. All right, that brings us to the close of today's hearing. Very rapidly done, so thank you very much for your precision of your presentation, and that concludes today's hearing.